Okay, I admit this one might be a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I've heard that salt can kill vampires, and can dispel various supernatural beings. So let's try it out. If he just burst into flames right now, I'd be like, "What?" Okay, no. All right, salt didn't do anything. Barry's just really, really, really salty right now, I have to say. Okay, hey everybody, Techie 101 here. We're continuing on with the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia deal, but here's the kicker. I was talking about paramecias. Today is the gas fruit, which is a logia. So what's up with that? So there's not that many logias in the story, and in fact, I've talked about most of them already, even caribous. But the two logias that I missed somehow are Caesar Clown's gas fruit, and also coincidentally, the other logia that shows up in the Punk Hazard arc, Monet's Yuki no Mi. I've made videos talking about the theories revolving around the Yuki no Mi, like being reincarnated on the Sunny in one of Nami's tangerines and stuff like that, but I've yet to make an actual dedicated video for it. So instead of waiting to the end, like doing all the paramecias, then doing all the zoans, then tackling the logias at the end, I'm just going to put them in here right now. And in fact, it's actually going to get broken up because the order in which these devil fruits are revealed in the Punk Hazard arc, it goes Caesar's gas fruit, then it goes Kinemon's fruit, because Kinemon is introduced in Punk Hazard. We learn about the clothing fruit. It's not named, but we see the ability. And then we get Monet's snow fruit. So it's going to go Caesar, then Kinemon, then Monet. But I felt like it would break it up quite a bit. All right, so for this video, every now and then, I love talking about stuff with various, like, applications. In this case, it's the gas fruit, so it's all about chemistry. So all the chemistry majors that are watching this right now, I need your assistance, all right? Because I'm probably going to mess things up, but I've been reading a lot about this because, like, it's a topic I am fascinated about, and I am reading a little bit more about chemistry and other kinds of things. Like, I get bored sometimes and just read about biology sometimes, as you do, right? Okay? So, Caesar Clown has the ability to turn into gas. What kind of gas? What is that? It was like, there's lots of different kinds of gas, Caesar. In fact, this is the first thing that's amazing. Gas is a state of matter. Anything can become a gas. Like, literally anything. Look at the periodic table of elements. Literally, under certain conditions, with the right temperature and pressure, any element on the periodic table can, phase transition into a gas. Now, some of these are incredibly difficult. It's not easy to turn something like iron into a gas. You would need temperatures well over like 5,000 degrees to get it into a gas, but it can happen. I was curious, the gas that is the hardest to transform, the hardest to get into the gaseous state, is tungsten. You would require temperatures over 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit to get tungsten gas, but it can happen. So here's the initial question. If Caesar Clown is a master chemist, he is a mad scientist after all, and he has all of these, he has the knowledge of all the periodic table and everything. He uses oxygen quite a bit to make, like, the blue sword and everything like that. And he also, rips all of the air around the area so Luffy cannot breathe. He knows what he's doing in that regard. Could he create any gas? He mostly focuses on, like, poisonous gases, right? Like the Death Country, and then he eventually uses that kill gas on Zoe. Well, Jack uses it, but it was developed by Caesar, and then he had the Roko gas that, like, dispels that gas, right? So he's focusing a lot on, like, gas weapons, biohazard weapons, stuff like that, because that's what he's paid for, right? But if you just look at, like, the periodic table of elements and all the shit that he should be capable of doing, if he is able to just turn into any gas at will at any time. Oh boy. Oh man, this is wild. I'm assuming he cannot do that. I'm assuming Caesar at just any given time cannot just be like, I'm tungsten gas now. Now I'm helium gas. Now I'm uranium gas. Now if he could do that, that would be wild. So I'm assuming when Caesar is in his base state here, He's basically taking maybe the natural elements inside of the human body. So we got a lot of hydrogen, we got some nitrogen, we got a lot of oxygen inside of us, we got carbon in there. Maybe he's just turning that stuff into gas, and that's how he's moving around. He's also incorporating a lot of his poisons. So it seems like he can develop a poison and then store it inside of him and kind of turn into that poison whenever he wants. He uses one of his first techniques is gas robe, which is just he makes his robe very gaseous and billowy, and then he goes and just like smothers a person using that robe, and it's poison, and they inhale it and they die. Now, it didn't work on Luffy because Luffy already had such a high poison tolerance from Magellan, but that's the idea. So, with Caesar being a master chemist, he develops poison. It's like, yes, no, this poison will be delicious. And he eats that poison, probably doesn't get diarrhea from it, and that's just incorporated into him now. So I guess he could just shift into that poison whenever he wants. And at the end he absorbs the Shinokuni, and then he turns into that giant purple final form with antlers. He had antlers for some reason in that final form. I guess I don't know. It looked cool, and that's something there. So Oda does play with the idea that you can do a lot of stuff with gas, but I just feel like he didn't go far enough with it, and that could be for a number of different reasons. Like, for one thing, Caesar was a strong enemy, and if the Straw Hats had to fight him pre-time skip, that would have been fairly difficult, if not impossible, right? The Straw Hats had a really hard time dealing with Logias before the time skip. They got lucky with Crocodile, because Luffy figured out his weakness was water, which was pretty common. But fighting against Caesar, ooh, that would have been tough pre-time skip without Haki, okay? But this is post-time skip, and the Straw Hats have trained, and it's almost like Oda was like, okay, I want to incorporate some Logias early on in the new world that the Straw Hats have to deal with, because now they have Haki and they have a way of fighting back. Luffy now has a way of decking a Logia right in the nose, and that happened with Caesar quite a few times. And then Monet as well. That was I'll talk about her when we get to her video, but that was a really, bombastic scene when Zoro did not use Haki, but was just fast enough to cut her in half to kind of show that, like, if he had used Haki, he would have killed her. And so that kind of, like, froze Monet there. So that was Oda kind of showcasing, like, yeah, Logias used to be, like, all that, and now they're kind of not anymore. And also we even see that during Fishman Island when Peckhams defeats Caribou, and he even says, Logias that think they're invincible have very short lifespans in the new world, okay? Now, I wouldn't put Caesar on the same level as Caribou. He's just as every bit as scummy, if not worse than Caribou, but he is more intelligent than that, all right? So he has a couple of different ways he can utilize this. So Usopp squares up against him once. Usopp goes against a Logia. That's pretty badass. How many Logias has Usopp tried to defeat? He tried to fight Eneru that one time. That's something. Anyway, so Usopp's like, wait a minute. This guy's made of gas. I'm just going to fire a flame star at him. He's going to ignite and explode. Instant kill right there. I've played Pokemon. I know how type advantage works. So he fires a flame star at Caesar, and Caesar just uses his ability to kind of just absorb all of the oxygen, everything, all the flammable gas in the area, basically makes a vacuum. This is an ability called Karakuni, or airless world, or airless void. He removes all of that, and there's nothing for the flame to combust anymore, so it just kind of fizzles out. That was really clever. I really like that idea, right? He also has an ability. He has some tools he uses. One is his gastanets, which are castanets, but gastanets. I thought that was a pretty cool. That's a pun. I like that pun. That was a good one, Oda. He pulls that out, and he can kind of create a spark with his gastanets, and then various gases that are combustible with a spark. He just, ignites them that way. He also pulls out some matches when he was fighting Luffy, because the flames don't really seem to affect him at all. Even if he lights himself on fire with it, that doesn't really seem to damage him whatsoever. He has a thing called Myoku gas. He uses that against Luffy, and Luffy kind of gets really close to him. He just takes out a pair of matches and just lights them, and his whole body just immolates. Just, giant firestorm right there. And he's able to just kind of adjust that, and just like when he wants it to stop burning, he just removes the flammable gases, and he goes back to normal, okay? So he's essentially immune to fire, which, you know, if he was fighting against, I mean, Sanji was around with Diabo Jambe, but he was kind of dealing with Virgo at that point there. By the way, I was rereading these scenes. Remember that scene when Virgo goes to fight Sanji and he basically cracks Sanji's bones in his leg? Virgo was strong, except he wasn't, except he was, but he really wasn't, you know? Virgo didn't really do much in this story, but it was just something I wanted to bring up. Yeah, Sanji was there, he had Diabo Jambe, but it makes me curious, like if Caesar fought against Sabo. You know, like how that would go. Or if he fought against Ace. Or if he fought against Akainu. There's even some stuff we're going to get to in a moment with all these crazy gases that he could maybe utilize. I think he was thinking too small with it. Because, you know, Caesar is psychotic. You know, he's a mad scientist after all. He's like, I will make all of the poison gas. You know, like that's his idea. But like Caesar, you don't need to rely on, like, poisonous gases. I mean, like, just, like, making really complicated formulas or whatever. If you just stuck to the periodic table and the periodic table alone, you would have come up with some crazy shit that probably could have dissolved Luffy in an instant, all right? And with that being said, I went out and I started to look for, like, all right, what is the deadliest element on the periodic table if it was turned into a gas? All right, what element? I'm not talking about some complex molecules, poisons that humans have cooked up over the years, like some artificial stuff. I'm just talking about looking at the periodic table. What is the deadliest element on there in gas form? And ladies and gentlemen, if you're chemistry majors, if you know stuff about chemistry, if you work in a chemistry, you probably already know. But like, I'll tell you anyway, the horrors of fluorine gas. Holy shit, fluorine gas is scary. It's really scary. I was watching some videos about it last night and how it reacts to, like, pretty much everything.
Oh, God.
And, I don't know. If Caesar had access to that, I don't think Luffy would have been able to beat him. I don't even know if Akainu would have been able to beat him. It really comes down to how much hockey is involved here, but, like...
This is an element capable of lighting a brick on fire.
No, it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. You know, it's just, I'm not going to subject you to fluorine gas, Barry. Don't worry, all right? I'm sure I would probably die in the process. It's okay. It's all right. But, you know, interesting that it can, in fact, melt a brick. Yeah. So, fluorine gas is extraordinarily reactive. Like, it reacts to everything, violently oxidizing anything. Flesh, that's going to burst into flames. Metal, that's going to burst into flames. Even certain noble gases under the right conditions, which the whole point of noble gases is that they're not very reactive, can react to fluorine gas under certain conditions, okay? If only a small amount of fluorine gas, if you were to end up feeling a small amount of it, you're fucking dead. You're just dead. That shit gets in your lungs. It's going to mix with the water inside of you and make hydrofluoric acid. All right, it hits your skin. Your skin is just gonna just light on fire and just massive chemical burns. All right, like this shit is insanely dangerous, and it's just an element on the periodic table, right? You know, it's right there. So if he would have used this against Luffy, like, look, I understand Caesar. The whole airless world thing, removing the oxygen of the area so Luffy can't breathe, like that's a clever idea. That's a unique idea that, you know, him as a brilliant chemist would come up with. But like, dude, if he just covered the entire lab in fluorine gas, I'm sorry, Caesar, look, the Death Country purple gas, the petrification shit you created, it wasn't that great. You could just crack people out of the shells and they're perfectly fine. It wasn't that effective, to be honest with you. You should have just tried to sell fluorine gas to the underworld or whatever. That would have worked a lot better. The entire, whatever you poured that on would have just, like, just burned up, okay? Maybe that's the reason Caesar didn't do it. If he tried to use fluorine gas against Luffy and the entire crew, that might have also destroyed his entire laboratory in the process, so he didn't want to do that. The Death Country stuff, the Shinokuni, that was more focused on, like, only killing, like, living things, so maybe that's what he was really focused on here. But no, yeah, you'd think, though, like, if he had that in his repertoire as, like, a last-ditch effort, like, he was getting his ass kicked by Luffy with, like, the Grizzly Magnum and everything, you think it'd be like, shit, no. All right, I didn't want to use this straw hat. It could destroy my entire lab, but whatever. Fluorine gas. Luffy would have fucking exploded. His whole body would have lit on fire. His flesh would have pulled off. He would have been turned into a pile of bones. And then the bones would have probably lit on fire. This technique could probably even kill Brook. Dude, and also, like, you think about it, like, how would, like, a Kainu, for example, handle, like, a chemical burn, right? Because the whole thing with a Kainu when he killed Ace was, like, magma burns hotter than fire. I have the superior devil fruit because it burns hotter. Ugh! And then he kills Ace. I don't know if you guys knew that. Spoiler alert, Ace is dead. Sorry. Condolences. But how would it deal with chemicals? You know, like if Caesar Clown just appeared in front of Akainu and just blew a bunch of fluorine gas in Akainu's face, you know, that's going to dissolve shit. It's going to... It's not the same thing as actual fire, right? Going back to the tungsten thing, actually, tungsten has the highest melting point out of all metals. It's really resistant to heat. So if Caesar could just turn into any gas he wants, just phase transition whenever he wants, like, I will transform into tungsten gas. Pretty much at that point, there's nothing that heat's not killing him at that point. Heat, fire, magma, that's not doing dick to him at that point, right? So, you know, it really does, because I can't even say he's dumb and doesn't do that. He's a brilliant scientist, okay? You know, so he should be able to do that stuff. That really kind of seems like Oda didn't want to get too much into it, right? He's just like, yeah, he can control gas, and I'm going to play with some stuff with the air and things, and he has this cool blue sword where he basically takes the oxygen from the surrounding area, condenses it into the hilt, shoots it out, and then lights it on fire, and he has this really cool blue fire sword. And he also can fire laser beams. He has a technique called gas steel, where he just fires like a blue pacifista laser that can melt steel beams. You know, so he can do that kind of cool shit with it. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong. That's clever, Oda. But I feel like Oda could have went way further than this and make it way more complicated. And it actually could have been really devastating and hard for the Straw Hats to beat him ultimately, okay? Even the ability he has, the airless world, to, you know, remove all the oxygen, that's only in a specific area, and it's like not even that far. Like Luffy just kind of jumped backwards a few meters and he was outside of the range of it, so that kind of sucks, right? I think he would have done better by just covering the entire lab in some kind of really toxic substance. Maybe not fluorine gas, but just like, I'm just gonna blow this, you know, really toxic gas around you. But like, Luffy's kind of immune to a lot of poisons, so that doesn't work. But like, it doesn't matter if Luffy's immune to poisons. You can make some caustic shit that can like begin to melt his flesh, and it doesn't matter if he's resistant to poison. That's not going to help there. But yeah. What other techniques does he got? I think I actually went through like most of them here. Gas robe, Gastanet, Karakuni, Shinokuni, gas steel, blue sword. So the Roku is a nullification technique, okay? So he basically just puts his hands together like this, and then he kind of just sends out this neutralizing gas that stops the gas on Zoe, and that saves the Mink's lives, okay? And that he was kind of coerced to do that. Because he's made of gas, he basically can fly, he can float around, he has really high mobility. That's another thing, too. Like, if he... Like, I don't want to say Caesar could beat Akainu, because that kind of sounds dumb, but like, hey, they're both Logias. At the very least, Caesar has way better mobility than Akainu. He would have more mobility. He would have better mobility than, like, most Logias. Like, Smoker. Oh, another Logia that was in Punk Hazard. Punk Hazard was the Logia arc, now that I'm thinking about it. But Smoker can turn into smoke, which is like a type of gas, right? But I just feel like Caesar, he can make stuff that's like dense, he can make stuff that's super light, and he can, because different gases are lighter, you know, he can move around way easier. He can even turn his body into that gaseous form. So it shows that he has really good control over his body in that gaseous state. You know what I mean? Like, he's not just like kind of learning about, like, we've never seen Smoker turn into like a 100% smoke demon that's able to, like, you know, like he's just walking around as a smoke monster or something. You know, Smoker could turn his legs into smoke or his arms into smoke, but he never becomes like this. Caesar was able to do this, and I feel like that like shows he has really, really good control over his fruit. But we just never saw all of the other crazy stuff he could do with it, right? And then after he was captured by the Straw Hats, he was put in like Sea Prism Stone and stuff, and they had his heart as well, so he was kind of up shit creek without a paddle there. But hey, currently he's with Judge at the Germa Kingdom, and they're starting up Neomads. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some new stuff with him. Oh, by the way, he was also able to make that hallucination gas that made Katakuri fight against Oven. Katakuri and Oven are really strong opponents, and the fact that Caesar was just able to breathe some hallucination gas and get them to, fight each other, that's really good. Why didn't he use the hallucination gas against Luffy? I feel like Caesar's been a little bit nerfed here, Oda. I feel like you really needed Luffy to win that fight, so you're going to take away a lot of Caesar's strongest moves, right? Yeah, I don't know. Now, look, you also got to consider, because Caesar's not the only person that has this devil fruit. It's actually really, really unique. Vegapunk was talking about how he could not replicate Logia abilities. Like, that was really hard to do. But for some reason, there's actually 3 gas fruit users in the story, which is weird. Caesar Clown's the first one, so that's who I was talking about up until now. Then we have Cedar, who was the pharmacist that was helping Chopper and everybody at Zoe. And then we have Gangster Gastino, who's a member of the Fire Tank Pirates. They all have the exact same devil fruit. So you tell me how that works. I don't know. And they all seem to be relatively in the same level of competency in using them. So we haven't seen anything crazy from each, but it is crazy. It's the only devil fruit that has 3 separate users, all of the same ability, and it's never been explained by Oda. So he's got stuff. He's got to say some stuff about that, right? All right, so another aspect of this I wanted to look into. Since Caesar really likes to enjoy sucking the air out of a particular area, I was thinking of all the other ways that you could do that, because what makes up the air around us, right? Like, we got some oxygen, we got CO2 in there, and we also got nitrogen, like a lot of nitrogen. Like, most of the air is nitrogen, correct? Okay, so what he does, he kind of removes all of that, and so it's kind of like a vacuum where you kind of just suffocate, like Luffy could not breathe at all. But you could do some really crazy shit with this. Like, you could add more oxygen into the air around you. You could pump more oxygen into the area around you, and then everything is super combustible, right? You pump a lot of oxygen into the air, you light a match, the whole area goes up in flames, okay? So that could be a way to do it. If you increase the level of CO2, you get hypercapnia, which is CO2 poisoning. So you would just begin to feel really suffocated, and you would die that way. But the scariest is if he upped the concentration of nitrogen in the surrounding area, because nitrogen is colorless and odorless. So if you were breathing in pure nitrogen at first, you might not even know you are breathing in pure nitrogen, but you would start to feel dizzy. You might even have a euphoric sensation, like you're kind of feeling a little high, but eventually you would go unconscious and you could die from that. So that would be the craziest ability, right? Like, Caesar's fighting everybody and he just increases the level of nitrogen, and you don't even really notice it first. But then as you're fighting him, you start feeling really dizzy and high, and this has nothing to do with fucking poison resistance, I don't think. This is not the same thing as getting injected with a tetrodotoxin or something, or whatever Magellan was using, right? This is something else. This is, you're inhaling pure nitrogen now, all right? Your body's gonna have a reaction to that. So in that case, it's stuff like that. We could have seen some way more cool shit with him. Hey, he's still around. He's not dead. He's doing stuff. He's at Neomads right now, so who knows? Maybe Caesar will go back to the drawing board and man, I was too much focused on the poison gases and everything. I need to do something more back to basics kind of thing, right, Judge? I don't know. They could figure out something. Maybe the Germa all start walking out with gas blasters, special weaponry or something like that. How deadly are Caesar Clown's farts? These are the questions that Oda is probably thinking of right now. So we could have something with that. He could probably, he could fire a laser beam out of his mouth. He could probably fire a laser beam out of his ass, okay? So since this is a Logia, the awakening is going to look a little different than Paramecia's, okay? So we don't know exactly the entire, rule set for an awakened Logia, but we have some indications. Also, the fact that Akainu and Aokiji fought on Punk Hazard, who were also Logias. What is with all the Logias connected to Punk Hazard? Aokiji, Akainu, Monet, Caesar, and Smoker. 5 Logias, all very relevant in the Punk Hazard arc in some way, shape, or form. Very strange. But, yeah, so it's basically going to be the Death Country, the technique he used there. If he awakened the gas fruit, the entire area, the whole climate of which he lived around would basically turn into that. In fact, I hesitate to say if he was already awakened, but, effectively he kind of was. because, you know, he was able to kind of like change the disaster. Like he was able to absorb all of the gas that was left over from the explosion on Punk Hazard into himself. All right. So, and he kind of already affected the island in a different way using Smiley and having that explode and turn into the giant pillar of gas. You know, like he was able to affect the island's climate, but not like just, he had to do some tricks in order to get it. He wasn't able just to do it himself. And from what we understand with an awakened Logia, the weather stays like that for like time, you know, like Aokiji and Akainu's fight happened on Punk Hazard 2 years prior, but half the island is lava and half the island is the Arctic, and that seems to be the way it's going to be for a long time. Raijin Island has just constant lightning pulling down on it, probably from a previous user of the Goro Goro no Mi, and this is well documented in Weatheria, so it's Raijin Island's probably been like that for decades, if not centuries. So that kind of gives you the idea, right? If Caesar was truly awakened, he'd be able to adjust the entire island's climate, and just like the whole thing would be covered in a thick miasmic fog of whatever gas he decided, and it would stay like that for years, maybe even centuries. That would be a true awakening of this power, and then he could rule over the entire island as the Gas King. I mean, I'm sure he probably wants to be the Gas King, but I don't think he's going to be, but he could. I could picture Caesar having a really elaborate robe with the crown and then swirling some delicious, I know, beryllium, and just like, ah, yes, this is the life. But hey, I want to see more stuff with this fruit. You know, Caesar's a shit character, but I want to see some more stuff with this, looking at all the crap he could do. So here at the end, I'm just going to say, yeah, if you are a chemist or something and you actually can understand all the crazy stuff he would be able to do, controlling gas itself as a medium, turning himself into it, creating it, whatever he wants to do, what are some cool techniques Caesar could utilize? Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, that's the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Next time is going to be Kinemon's Garb fruit. He makes clothing. And then we'll talk about Monet, and then we'll get back to the rest of the Paramecias. All right. Thanks, everybody. Tekking, signing out.